out, fingers.
And I don't have any relevance to horses whatsoever, so I'm just coming for a fun day out. And like I said, Sunday, what else is there to do?
Absolutely, and
watch football.
It's also a chance to see who's made it into this week's Celebrity Diary. Sadly, no Bob Hoskins. So is that why he's here?
I haven't got any interest at all. Not at all. The invite turned up and Linda said, we're going. So I'm here. Yeah, I suppose there are a lot of the posh. Yeah. All the scum are sort of hanging around the bar like me.
High spirits too amongst the international polo players. But amidst all this in-crowd chat, some people are thinking no, not about polo, but football, and how you know who are going to do.
Oh, fingers crossed, but when you watch someone like England and watch some of the other games, you think, oh, there's some great players out there. Yeah, we have some, but it just depends whether we hit form, and I think a little bit of that will be down to luck, and I'm just keeping everything crossed for a change.
I know it seems maybe like a slight distraction, but this event is, would you believe it, about these things. Horses, or rather, if I can use the correct polo parlance, ponies, remembering all those Jilly Cooper novels. Talking of which, she's the one person I can't find here.
The Queen's Cup Polo is the climax to 3 weeks of competition between 14 of the world's best teams. It's about money. It costs £350,000 to keep 6 polo ponies of this class for just a year. So this is great millionaire hunting territory. Those in the horse business have their own opinions about the social scene the sport inspires.
Do you really want me to tell you? What a load of old rubbish. No, it's nice to see them. They make it colour, they colour the place, and it gives it the attraction. But the main attraction is the 8 men sitting on ponies out there is the main attraction. And the beauty of the horses that go with it.
If the playing was top-notch, just like the childcare for guests provided by Norland nannies, if only the same could be said for the weather. The heavens opened just as the Queen arrived, forcing crowds either to flee home or into the tent. Only the hardiest of enthusiasts stuck it out till the end. The result, if you understand it, 13-3 to Kerry Packer's team, Elliston White. Madeline Holt, BBC News, Windsor.
Now, look at what some of the international newspapers are reporting around the world. The Sydney Morning Herald has this photograph as a triumphant Pauline Hanson takes calls from supporters on the veranda of her house. The federal government's been rocked by the emergence of her major new third force in Australian politics. Pauline Hanson's fledgling One Nation party drew a massive 23% of the vote in Queensland. On to the Hong Kong Standard. Beijing and Washington expected to announce their commitment to ending the regional economic crisis at the Sino-US summit later this month. And the International Herald Tribune, as in round 1 of the Asian financial turmoil, the immediate impact on the outside world looks to be overwhelmingly favourable, it says. Money flooding out of Asia into the perceived safety of US and Western European government bond markets is pushing yields down to modern-era lows. And the Asian Age, the foreign ministers of the group of 8 industrialised nations have put the spotlight firmly on Kashmir by directing India and Pakistan to avoid cross-border infiltration. A look at some of the newspapers. You're watching BBC News.
Well, today sees England taking part in the World Cup, and of course the kick-off is at 1:30. Temperature-wise, very warm, 25 degrees Celsius, but generally it should stay dry and bright. Now, if we have a look at the weather for the UK, low pressure continuing to push in by the end of the week, indeed tightening isobars, indicating not only are we going to see wet weather, but it's also going to be rather windy. You can see the winds circulating around an area of low pressure here as we go into Tuesday, but watch them coming up from the southwest as we get towards the end of the week, and quite strong bursts in there as well. My only consolation is at least they're coming from a milder direction. And talking of temperatures, you can see the fresher colours sweeping down, then being replaced by the yellows and indeed the browns as we head towards the end of the week. Friday shaping up quite nicely if you live down in the south. So this morning we've got rain pushing in towards the northeast of the country, making inroads down towards northern parts of England. Some low cloud and fog here, so if you are travelling in the early hours, do take extra care. Dry and bright predominantly through northern and western parts, and still unsettled through the bulk of England and Wales with some showers. Will be some sunny intervals. It's not going to be wet all the time, but if you are caught in a shower, it's likely to be heavy and prolonged, and you may even hear the odd rumble of thunder, and that holds true as we go through the afternoon. The rain in the north extending inland into some central parts of Scotland. Temperature-wise, well, we're looking at best in Scotland about 16 degrees Celsius, that's 61 in terms of Fahrenheit, shared also by parts of Wales, but getting increasingly milder the further south you travel.
For a foreign perspective on Britain,
nice land and nice people.
I am very happy in this country, it's beautiful country.
our people,
a great way of thinking, the people who live here.
our politics.
Tony Blair.
The politician here, very nice.
Dateline London, 4:30 Monday on News 24 and BBC One.
BBC. Oh.
The city has been terribly damaged by 5 years of fighting. It is quite simply the most violent area in the most violent country on earth. John Simpson, BBC News, Mogadishu. Nothing in Algeria nowadays is clear-cut. John Simpson, BBC News, Baghdad.
Simpson's World, Tuesday at 4:30 in the morning on BBC News 24 and BBC One.
Watching BBC News 24, I'm Alistair Yates, and the latest news for you now at almost 3:30. The government has condemned the behaviour of English football fans involved in running battles in Marseille. The Sports Minister, Tony Banks, said a moronic minority of supporters were ruining the country's reputation abroad. Riot police repeatedly fired tear gas at large crowds when fighting broke out ahead of England's opening match against Tunisia today. Dozens of people, most of them British, have been arrested, and more than 20 people have been arrested. The body of the missing toddler Ernest Barry has been found by police in the River Clyde. The 5-year-old boy had been missing from his home in the Gorbals area of Glasgow since Friday night. A massive air and ground search was mounted by police. His body was found just half a mile from his home. A post-mortem examination will be held today to try to establish the cause of death. The Conservative Party has said it could vote against the Northern Ireland peace agreement in the Commons this week. It wants assurances that the decommissioning of weapons will begin before the early release of prisoners.
The bill is fatally flawed. It doesn't stick to the agreement. It isn't what the people bought when they were voting for it in the referendum. And frankly, if the bill is not amended, the people of Northern Ireland have been badly misled.
Danish Coast Guards say they've lost hope of finding 5 Scottish fishermen whose trawler sank in the North Sea. The men from the ports of Mallaig and Fraserburgh were killed when their boat, the Silbury Sea, was hit by a German freighter. Rescue services have called off the search for survivors. Workers at London Underground have begun a 48-hour strike. The action over pay and conditions is being taken by members of the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union, and is expected to cause major disruption to all tube services. London Underground say they hope to have at least some trains running on all lines. That's the news for the moment. I'll have a full bulletin for you at the top of the hour. But now it's time for Chronicles.
In this week's Chronicles, we look back at when there was rioting on the streets of Paris, a notorious guest was greeted by the Queen, and there was the untimely death of a popular chat show host. But first, 30 years ago this week, thousands of people turned out to pay their respects as Robert Kennedy's body was taken by train to Arlington Cemetery. He had been killed by a Palestinian gunman while campaigning for the presidency in California.
The church and the nation mourn the latest Kennedy to lay down his life under their banners. At the Kennedy gravesite in Arlington National Cemetery, now one of the most tragic places of pilgrimage in the world, young Joseph Kennedy III kneels at his father's cross. The actual interment took place in secret after midnight, but within a few hours after dawn, Mrs. Kennedy and a group of the family and friends came to pay homage. The public followed, many of them tourists. That, with the sultry heat of Washington, must account for the incongruously gay informality of their costume. Roman Catholics, whose special loss this is, go to Washington's Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, the greatest Catholic monument in the United States. At Washington's Protestant cathedral, the grief is no less sincere. The Kennedys had largely overcome sectarian prejudice. As the crowds leave, the bells, usually so clamorous, are silent.
No mourning can last forever. And before long, the business that Robert Kennedy was about when he died, the business of politics, will be taken up by other hands. Constitutionally, it must be done, and psychologically, it needs to be done if the hope and enthusiasm which Kennedy